All right, everybody, it's that time again. Truck talk, and we're getting down to the wire now. The Fed decision is going to be later on. I should say tomorrow because it's going to be about 20 minutes from the time that I'm doing this video. So, um, like I said, like about 8 years ago, maybe nine, I was a commodities specialist, and I had a mortgage broker client. He was a mortgage broker for about 30 years, and he didn't know anything about the futures and option markets. And when I introduced him to the markets and he became my client, we would talk about the issues that were going on because the manipulation of the markets was getting pretty bad back then. That was the time that the Bush administration, with Hank Paulson, started using bailouts to really bail out the markets, and about the time that President Obama was getting elected. And the way he likened the investment markets and the economy was like a pond. And all your investments are like lily pads, and you're like the little frog trying to jump off from lily pad to lily pad to lily pad, while you got this one world communist government that's like this bass that's under the surface of the water, that's just waiting for you to sink into the water so that they can eat you. And so we're kind of seeing that kind of environment where the Fed is like this big mouth bass. They talk a good game and they manipulate interest rates, and they invest in markets because really nobody has money to be investing right now. At least not, too many individuals. A lot of people, I'm reading about the debt is skyrocketing, and delinquencies on the debt, on payments of the debt, are increasing. So we're coming into hard times where people can't afford to pay for the credit that they're getting from the banks and from the investment houses. So why would they go into investments like the stock market when they don't really know what's going on? They won't gamble with that. They need to feed their families. They need to pay their bills. So they're most likely going to be putting their money towards the things that help them function in daily life. So they're like the frogs. They're jumping from lily pad to lily pad, just trying to survive. And little by little, those lily pads sink as their weight gets on them, and that chomping bass, big mouth bass, is just under the surface waiting to consume them. So it's a very stressful environment for everybody. I mean, and especially if you're an investor, because you're an investor like me. I got into municipal bonds, and they've been doing pretty well up until this point. Now the Fed started raising interest rates. When the Fed started raising interest rates, I started to get terrified because the basically municipal bonds are the debt that cities borrow or issue in order to fund whatever it is their projects are, their liabilities. And in this case, it's probably a pension. And we're finding out that some of those pensions are unfunded. A lot of the cities have invested in things that they can't afford to pay for. They've allowed for retirement funds that they don't have the money to fund. So a lot of the government employees with their pensions, they're going to find out that those are worthless. They're empty. And so you're going to see a lot of the municipal bonds collapse. So I kind of switched my strategy as interest rates started rising. And I actually put it into high risk junk corporate bonds, which you're probably going, what are you doing? But I like the yield on it. So some of the yield from the munis has been going into the corporate bonds, and then the corporate bonds have been yielding, and I'm taking that interest and I'm putting it into commodities because I believe that we're going to have some massive inflation. And then I've also been slowly working my way into the cryptocurrencies market. I didn't understand much about it, so I wanted to educate myself on it. Once I started educating myself on blockchain and cryptocurrencies, I started to realize just how significant that's going to be in the future, because every market is manipulated except the cryptocurrency market, and the government's trying to get their hand in on it. You saw the IRS going after Coinbase, and now I'm reading today that I'm trying to remember where I read it, but the government now is requiring anyone who's coming into the United States from a foreign land to declare any cryptocurrency holdings they have or any cryptocurrencies on their person as well. So they're requiring people to report that, and someone from another country who comes from a communist country may do that. They may agree to just say, all right, fine, here's my stuff. But any wise person would realize there's no way to track it, so why would I report it? So government's pushing a futile effort to try to remain relevant, but they've just been so oppressive, and the globalist banks have been so oppressive that we're seeing that system collapse. So tomorrow we're going to find out. I firmly believe that the Fed is going to continue to raise interest rates. They're going to raise it like 25 basis points, or 25% basically, to kind of maintain the value of the dollar, because the dollar is still their currency. The Fed is the one who issues the US dollar. It's a Federal Reserve note. If you look on your dollar bill, it's a Federal Reserve note, which means it's basically Federal Reserve cryptocurrency. And the Fed is the one who issues it. And we're seeing the value of it go in the toilet. Because the markets today rose, but the dollar lost some value, and along with gold and silver. Gold and silver are also manipulated. So you've got these banks, these gangster banksters going out manipulating every market and trying to scare everyone into certain positions so that they can take their money. And if we listen to what the Fed's been saying over the last couple FOMC meetings, they've been saying that basically during the crash they've been buying bad assets so that they can rescue the economy. But really what they're doing is they're trying to maintain this fake currency game of the dollar that they can just print out of nowhere and tax us out of nowhere. They're trying to keep this game going. And so what they do is they take that dollar and they plow it into markets, and they make the markets look good. So typically they've been buying tech stocks, and we started to see a flash crash. And I think that they generated that flash crash. And some people, because some people held on to like Apple, Facebook, Netflix, things like that, those tech companies. And as the Fed or the central banks were buying those markets, making them rise, the people saw that their value of what they held was good, and they took profits. And then you see the banks come in and try to buy it in again to make it look good, and then they take their profits again. And so you might get a little bit of a buying opportunity because the banks may keep buying in like that. But the past FOMC meetings, the banks have been saying they want to take some of those crap investments off of their balance sheets because they've got so much of it. And right now the values of them are high. So they're trying to sucker people into the stock market, sucker people into real estate, sucker people into anything that they hold a derivative on, so that the values can be maintained. As people are coming into the markets and showing new interest, the Fed can sell into those markets and kind of cover up the fact that they're reducing their positions, but the price is still maintaining its stability because you're balancing the supply with the demand. But meanwhile, the people they're selling to are going to be stuck holding the bag, because when the markets finally crash, when the Fed finally releases all those assets from their balance sheet, the people who are still left holding those assets are assed out, or asseted out, if I wanted to kind of play with the word. But anyway, so what we're seeing is people are jumping from asset to asset. I'm one of them. I'm jumping from the muni bonds to the high yield corporate bonds, which are junk, and jumping that into the commodities, because I believe eventually what is going to happen is the dollar is going to increase in value. Why? Because they're going to raise interest rates. And you may see a sell-off in all these other assets over a certain period of time. It may not be immediately once the Fed raises rates. Why? Because again, the dollar is tanking. So when they raise interest rates, they raise the demand for the value of the dollar, right? And so they can use those dollars to go into the marketplace and purchase any stocks or bonds or anything that falls as a result of raising the interest rates. So they hold up those prices artificially. So you may see the stock market rally, even though the cost of trading the stock market on margin has gone up because of the Fed funds rate. Or you may see bonds rally, even though now the Fed funds rate has raised, so the interest payments that they're going to be making are going to be going higher, just because, like I said, the central banks may buy it up to mark up the prices on those. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. But again, long term, I think all those assets are going to collapse. and you'll see a strengthening of the dollar because the dollar is still perceived as the world's reserve currency, even though a lot of countries around the world are dumping the dollar secretly. So whenever there's a crisis in assets, you may see a small rally in the dollar. However, globalism is starting to fall apart, and the global system is starting to fall apart because communism never lasts, socialism never lasts. The game is all good until everybody runs out of money, other people's money. And we're starting to see other people's money is starting to run out. So you may see a rally in the dollar, and then at some point, globalism will become nationalism, where we stop holding on to each other because globalism is grabbing hands with the person across the seas with you. So if that person crashes, which we're starting to see in a lot of the real estate markets, and we're seeing bank runs in Spain, we're seeing Canada bank runs, you're starting to see bank runs, it's basically worldwide, the banks are starting to collapse. And when you're holding hands with each other, when one falls, you all fall. So you're going to start to see this globalism garbage get cut, and people are going to start letting go as nationalism rises. And so as that happens, currently the U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency. So there are trillions and trillions of dollars overseas outside of the U.S. That's called a euro dollar. It's away from the U.S. It's not the same as the euro. It's an investment outside of the U.S. of the U.S. dollar. And once you see the U.S. lose its world reserve currency status as a result of a shift in the power, which I think is going to go towards China, you may see the Chinese currency become the world reserve currency, or you may not. You might see the world go towards cryptocurrencies. Right now, like I said, it's those two worlds. It could go to the bass world below, or it could go to the frog world above, where it benefits the frogs. To me, I believe cryptocurrencies benefit the frogs because they're decentralized. The government cannot track any specific place and any specific person using those currencies. So it's very difficult for them to control. That's why they have to go attack the centralized places where people do trades with them. So Coinbase is a well-known exchange or place where they can purchase cryptocurrencies using US dollars. And so the U.S. government's going there and attacking Coinbase. As far as I know, Coinbase hasn't released any information about their people who are registered there and who are purchasing cryptocurrencies and avoiding paying income tax. But eventually that may happen because they're the most prominent entity for doing that. And so the U.S. government can attack them for right now. But any other exchange, the U.S. government hasn't been able to do that because most of these things are decentralized and they're just programs. How can you hold a program accountable? And the people are unknown and they're anonymous, and they're basically just numbers on a blockchain. So that's why I really love the blockchain, because really that's what I believe the U.S. was supposed to be like in the beginning. It was supposed to be a decentralized where the states retained sovereignty. They had most of the power, and then the U.S. federal government was just a coordination of all these states, which are basically their own countries. And that's why Europe is trying to copy our business model, but they're not doing a very good job of it, because the United States doesn't have a history of war between the states, as Europe has histories of war between France and Spain, Spain and England, England and France, France and Germany. All these different countries that combined to make the European Union have a bad history together. They have bad blood. You got bad blood, right? They got bad blood in their history, and they're trying to form a country or a regional a group like the United States. United States, it was just Indian tribes, and no one really possessed the land before. So there's no real history because the tribes are even small and disparate. So once the United States started to be purchased and conglomerated, and people started to occupy the land, there was no real history of warfare between United States. So, you didn't have Colorado fighting with Michigan and Michigan fighting with Massachusetts, because it's all the same peoples. They're just spreading across the country as the population grew. And so United States was able to integrate a lot easier. And it was only until after we started bringing in people from other countries through immigration policies that you start to get a little bit more fighting between the peoples, because all those people coming in to this country come from other countries where there's history. So let's say you have Pakistanis come to the United States and Indians come to the United States. If you know anything about India and Pakistan, they don't get along. But then those people come here to the U.S. and they're living right next to each other. Guess what happens? They don't get along here either. Sometimes that kind of eases up once they leave their corrupt countries. But a lot of times it doesn't. A lot of it stays in the hearts of the people. And this is the screwiness of a lot of people. They come from countries that are falling apart or they're war-torn, and they come to this country looking for a better life, and then they vote for the very same things, very same policies and craziness that existed in the countries that they fled, and they bring it here, and then they wonder why it happens here. I find it funny. You have liberals that come to California, they vote for Democrats, leftist Democrats, who take control of everything, and then there are no jobs. So those voters are like, why are there no jobs? You know what? I can't make a living in California, so I'm going to move to Texas. They think it's going to be better when they move to Texas. You know why? Because Texas is run by Republicans, conservatives, who know how to manage economies. Why? How do you know? Proof. There's business going on there. There are jobs going on there. So they want to move to Texas to get those jobs and to get that business. But guess what? They're carrying with them in their heart and their minds the very philosophies that created the problems in California. And they think by leaving California and going to Texas, all their problems are going to be solved. Guess what? When they get to Texas, it's going to be nice at first until they start voting. They're registered now to vote in Texas. They're going to start voting in Texas. And they're going to start implementing the same socialist, psychotic philosophies that are destroying California. And the jobs are going to flee Texas too. Mark my words, all you liberals moving there thinking it's a better place. Ain't going to happen. Most of my friends are moving to Texas too because they're conservatives and they don't like living in California. They don't like the gun control. They don't like the psychotic regulations on businesses and the Democrats talking about how we're in a drought. But then when we have these historic rains, the Democrats didn't bother to even to build any kind of infrastructure that would capture any of that rain. They just let it all trickle, flood the villages, and then it exits out into the ocean. Dummies, dummies, dummies. And what do? Instead, they're taking our taxpayer dollars and funding illegal immigration and creating more problems when it comes to work, stresses on our healthcare system, stresses on our taxation system. They like to say that they're paying taxes. How do you know illegal immigrants are paying taxes? Don't you call them undocumented? If they're undocumented, where's the documentation that they're paying taxes? They're not. You know what their tax is? They're taking the money out of the state and sending it back home to wherever they came from. Most of them are coming from Mexico because they're right at our border. But it doesn't necessarily have to be just Mexicans. It could be anybody doing that. But the Mexicans get the most blame because they're most notorious for it. We catch them walking over the border. But anyone can come in across the border now. You could have Syrian refugees go to Mexico and come across the border. So anyway, these philosophies are crazy. And the central banks are crazy wanting that stuff. And the churches are crazy for supporting all that stuff. They're all part of that globalist communist game. And it's all going to fall apart. It's all going to turn to national consideration. So my hope, as I see things happening, is that our world will become more decentralized. And in order for it to become more decentralized, all those centralized, fixed, established things are going to have to fall apart. And when they fall apart, it's going to be hard times for a little bit. So everybody, really, I'm emphasizing you need to prepare. You need to prepare. I've been posting things on Facebook and on Steemit. I'm going to try to start a Patreon site, but I think it's just too much because I've got so much learning curve to get with those things. Right now, I'm starting to master Steemit, and I've mastered Facebook, and I've mastered posting things on Instagram. And so I think I'm probably going to limit it to those platforms for right now while I upgrade my ham radio operator's license. I recommend that everybody get a ham radio operator's license. Learn to use ham radio because if your cell phone fails, you don't have landline anymore. So your other option is ham radio. And you can talk all around the world with ham radio. You just need to learn it. Don't try to use ham radio without your license. The FCC regulates that element of that industry and hobby. And so you need to learn the laws of ham radio and how to operate properly, or else you could get massive fines and you could be blacklisted from ever using that stuff. So make sure you learn how to do it properly and follow the regulations. It's not difficult. Just get a manual, study the questions, take the tests, and get your license. And you'll be able to communicate around the world. Other thing you should be doing is learning how to grow food. I keep emphasizing these things. Grow food. Because when the economy falls apart, there's no way they're going to be able to get food to the stores. And when people get desperate, they loot the stores because they're hungry. So first, start stockpiling water. You need water at least. You can go for days without food, but you can't last very long without drinks. So water. How much water? Figure out how much water do you drink per day. How much is that per week? How much is that per month? And see if you can slowly store up enough for a year. And then learn more about the cryptocurrencies and how money really works. It is a crazy world. We are living on the lily pad. So some people feel like they're really sinking, and maybe you are. And I don't want to stress people out. If you really lose money, as long as you have your family, you have the world. As long as you have your health, you have the world. So even though some of the stuff I say is scary and negative, there's still a positive to it. The most important is God, because when you die, all the stuff here in this world doesn't matter. I'm just trying to talk about the stuff that matters here right now while you're here, because you don't want to go up there too soon. God has his timing for you, but don't commit suicide to get to God. But as long as you're here, be a good steward of what you have and take care of your household. Take care of your family. So, learn to manage your money. If you're overextending yourself, pay off your debt. As an investor, the very first thing you can do is pay off your debt. If you've got 29% APR on your credit card, that's a guaranteed 29% you are making on your money if you pay off your debt now. There's no investment that can give you a guarantee like that. And I'm telling you, you pay off your debt, it's guaranteed return on your money. And then once you pay it off, don't go into debt anymore, at least not now. Right now is a very dangerous time to go into debt because we're going to see credit freezing. As the banks start to go bankrupt, as the people start to go bankrupt and they don't pay back their loans, no bank is going to want to lend money. So there's going to be no more credit coming out. You're going to see the exact same thing that happened in 2008, a credit freeze. So pay off your debts. Learn to manage the cash you have. If you don't have the money, don't buy it now. There was a Saturday Night Live skit about that. It was hilarious, but it was true, and a lot of people ignored it because it was a comedy skit. But if you don't have the money, don't buy it. It's that simple. So, and if you decide you do have some money and you do want to invest, only invest what you're willing to lose. And the moment you invest it, you have to be able to let it go, because you most likely will lose it if you don't know what you're doing. And especially if you don't take the time to learn it. Right now, many of us don't have the time to learn how to invest. A lot of things I'm telling you right now are almost like life and death about preservation of wealth, but it requires investment. So if you don't understand those things and you try to invest and you make mistakes, you're going to lose money. I mean, you're going to learn too by losing money, but that's an expensive way to learn. It's best to take your time and learn it. But right now, like I'm saying, the best thing you can do, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. So don't go investing in things that are philosophical if you don't have the money to pay your bills. Don't go into cryptocurrencies. Don't go into gold and silver. Don't go into the US dollar. Don't go into stocks, bonds. These are all philosophical investments. The reality is you have a bill to pay. So as soon as that dollar comes in from your work, send it to your bill. Pay your bills. Pay off your debt, guaranteed return, and you'll be happy. And then if you want to buy things that you own. Don't do it on financing. Don't get into more debt. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. Simple philosophies. And those are things I can recommend to you definitely until after all of the dust settles from the collapse. Because the collapse is coming because a lot of people overextended themselves. Okay? So, let's get her done. Oops, I'm getting a message from my wife. Yikes, not good message. She feels sick. So, all right, I'm going to end this message. And like I said, keep your eyes on tomorrow. And most likely the Fed's going to raise rates. Worst case, they'll probably keep them the same. If they do that, inflation. You guys take care. God love you and protect you.